Hello. Hi, my name is Itamar Apelblat. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Token Security. We are a company in the identity space, in the non-human identity space. And today we're going to talk about AI adoption, about agentic AI, about the different risks and security risks that you have while adopting AI, and why identity is such an important pillar in that security journey. In the past 6 months, many security leaders were reaching out to us, to me, and said that their board members, their CIOs, the CEOs were asking them for AI transformation to support this AI transformation. And they understand that identity is a big pillar that they need to support, but not necessarily know exactly how to do that or what to focus on. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about adoption of AI, and we're going to show different phases that organizations are going through in order to support a secure way to adopt AI. So we'll start by breaking down the different types of the identities that the organization has. Traditionally, we have human identities and workload identities, machine identities. Human identities are every identity that were meant for our employees, human in the organizations, contractors, to interact with resources and services in our corporate environment. Those identities are have boundaries and roles that are based on their, and permission that based on their roles and their roles in the organization and their responsibility, and they are usually being managed in a singular identity provider, one place to manage all of those users' identities. It could be your Active Directory, your NHIs, Okta, and different providers. And then we have workload identities. So workload identities are identities that were meant for automations to interact with one another. So think about your IAM roles, your service accounts, your different API keys that allowing automations to interact. Those are in a much more robust and scale pace are going in our organization. And what we see is that the boundaries that we have for those identities can be determined very easily, right? Because those workloads are deterministic. We can predict what they're meant to do, and their set of permissions is it could be determined. Now, agents identities are a hybrid identity, a bit of a combination of both the human identities that have the same flexibility of humans, but at the same time the robustness and the scale that workload identities has. Now, both for workload identities and for agents identities, we have this larger term called non-human identities that we're going to use a lot in today's conversation. And let's first dig into the change that happened in our identity stack. So in today's world, most of our identities are non-human. Matter of fact, 98% of your users are non-human identities, all of those automations. Now, that created a lot of challenges, not only because of the scale of the identities, but also because those users are decentralized. There is not a single place for you to look at and say, hey, this is all my service accounts, all of my AI agents, all of my non-human identities. Each technology that I'm using has their own user list, their own permission settings. It's how to create federation and trust relationship between those identities. Those identities are managed in my cloud, in my SaaS applications, in my on-prem, CI/CD, vaults, different applications, and also in our AI orchestration platforms. The other challenge is attribution. It's very hard for us to understand for each one of those identities who is the actual sponsor of it, who is the owner behind these non-human identities. So we have a large scales of identities. They are decentralized. It's hard to understand who is accountable for them. And they are also interconnected. So the fact that they are decentralized doesn't mean that they are siloed. So we see interconnectivity between different services, environment that create a bit of a chaos, and it's hard to separate and to segment those different applications. So today the biggest challenges when we talk about non-human identities is to continuously monitor them, detect anomalies, and also create a lifecycle process. For humans, we had it figured it out. We know exactly how to treat a human when he's joining the company, when he's moving between teams, how to update their permissions, and also to offboard and deprovision that identity. For non-human, it's much more complicated. But if we will tap into that, for AI agents, it's even more complicated. There's few unique security risks and challenges that are that AI adoption created, that are part of the AI characteristic. So we can divide them to three different types. The first one is the boundaries, the permissions that the AI can act on. So an AI can now take actions across a lot of different platforms. Because it's not a deterministic process, we only set a goal for this AI, allowing the AI to make the exact task, update permissions in order to accomplish that goal. Then we have a multi-agent environment, similarly to what we have with microservices. Also with Agentic AI, we have an agent that interact with another agent, that interact with another agent, that take an action in one of my resources. Now that creates a very unique challenge of identity chaining, of understanding who actually initiate this activity. Was it on behalf of a person or a different workload? And also traceability and logging, understanding compliance and audit around those actions that the AI took. The other layer that we need to take into consideration is that agents are self-improving, self-learning, and updating a lot of the time their permissions and their actions. Think about an agent that their goal was to have a cost optimization in my cloud. So one of the actions that they took was deleting our logs. This is an action that can create a lot of new security risks that never happened before with deterministic workloads and legacy identities and machine identities. So now that we understand better that an agent is a big pillar of securing an agent is understanding that its identity, and it's a big part of non-human identities. Now let's start to understand, how do we even discover those agents? So every agent, in order to be valuable in my organization, needs to have access to our organizational data. And in order to do so, it needs to interact and leverage identities. It could be a human identity, mostly it will be non-human identities that will allow them to interact with my important resources, whether it's my cloud, my SaaS applications, my different databases. Now, when we're trying to discover those agents, we need to answer three different questions. The first one is, where should we look for the agents? Where do we want to put our sensors? The second thing is, what we should look for in those sensors in order to diagnose an agents identities. And third part is also, start to prioritize, because those agents, not all of them are equal. We need to understand the and prioritize different agents in order to support them in scale. So the what question, we need first of all to look into our cloud applications, our AI, SaaS, third-party AI applications, looking into our network logs, into our audit and authentication events, and also our code repositories. Now, the things that we need to look at are LLM libraries in our code repositories. In our infrastructure as code, we need to see which Terraform templates allowing us access to different homegrown AI services in order to flag them as AI. We need to look into workloads that are interacting with third parties, known IPs that are leveraged AI. And also look into audit and telemetry in runtime in order to analyze AI activity. So now that we place our sensor and find all of our agents, the third part is to start to prioritize them. Now, this should be a risk-based approach. We need to look at all of the different permissions that the agent has. We need to understand what data is this agent allowing us to access, and we need to understand the ownership mechanism of this agent. Who is responsible for that? Once I understand the responsibility, the access that this agent has, I can now understand what will be the severity that this agent will get compromised, and also what will be the likelihood of this agent to get compromised. So now that we discovered our agents, we need to create a visibility layer for each one of those identities. For each one of the identities, we need to understand if the identity is being consumed by AI services or being leveraged in order to consume AI, and how it's being managed. So basically, understand who are the consumers of each identity. What actions are they doing? Are they interacting with known AI services? Are they being used by known third-party AI? We need to flag all of those different activities, workloads, consumers, and actions as part of our AI ecosystem. And as well, we need to connect each one of those identities into the human owner and sponsor in order to manage the life cycle of that agent. So now we map those agents, we understand and we visualize all the right information, and we can start secure those agents and monitor them actively. So now what we want to do is create this process, this model of how to adopt AI in a secure way. And this is those 4 phases that I'm going to introduce are phases that each organization is going to introduce with in a certain time. It all starts with us starting to experiment AI in our organization. Usually the security and the IT are not part of that process. We see different departments and different individuals that are curious with different AI services. It could be SaaS copilots, it could be different chats that our employees interacting in order to learn more about AI and become more efficient. What we want to do here as a security team and an IT department is to treat it as same as we treated shadow IT. So map all of those AI services, understanding what our enterprise is actually using. We can use and leverage our CASB and our DLP, and at the same time also start to inventory all of our non-human identities in order to get ready for the next phase. So in the next phase, we, the security teams, already got the mandate in order to support the AI adoption process and to set controls on top of that. So we created this architecture of which services do we want to allow our organization to use, which ones we shouldn't allow them, how do we want to share data, who has access to which data. So in this phase, we want to set controls that are also looking into the permissions elements. We want to look at each one of those non-human identities and ask ourselves, does it has the right permissions to interact with the right data? Same also with our human identities. That's what will allow us to move forward to the next phase. So in phase number 3, the organization already started to understand that AI is also a competitive advantage. And because we have so much important internal data, we can create our own homegrown models and processes in order to move even faster. What we'll see in this phase is homegrown models, MCP servers, leverage of agents in order to be more effective. What we want to do here is to have a full inventory of all of our non-human identities, have a strong separation between each one of our agents' identities, make sure that we don't have a shareable identity, and at the same time also make sure that everything is being audited and being traceable. That's what will allow us to move very well to the next phase, which is a full-blown, continuously AI, multi-layer AI, agentic AI environment where we have agents that generating new agents, that's creating new processes, creating new code and services, and for that we want to create a just-in-time access for those agents, just in time, just enough, and make sure that every action that an agent takes also align with a clear intent of what they did this action, and that it's a time-based access to the important resources. So now, after we moved from an organization that experiencing AI to an organization that have AIs that generating new AI and new workloads, we need to also think about our cross-function teams and how they need to interact and think about these AI adoption phases. So there are 4 different pillars that we need to look into, which will include our security team, our cloud security team, our identity team, our AppSec team, and GRC and different departments in the organization. The first one is our non-human identities. We need to treat them as first-class citizens, which means that each one of those identities need to have a separate identity. We can't have few agents that using the same identity for interacting with an important resources. We also need to have logs and traceable information for each one of those activities of the agent. The second thing is our data and governance controls. We want to make sure that we are supporting our compliance requirements and framework, that data is not being transferred between platform and breaking down our permission settings between different team members in our organization. The third part is also how we manage our models lifecycle process. We want to connect it into our CI/CD pipelines and processes, making sure that every testing and training process will be part of our CI/CD, and that we will have human involved in case that we need to. And the fourth one is to have a strong vendor vetting into our third-party AIs that we're using, as same as having clear boundaries of which data we share with which AI platform. I would love to share more about it, and also we created this AI security guide together with top security leaders, and also that was facing the same problems and the scope in order to support the entire community in this AI process and adoption of AI. Thank you very much.